Julian BriseBois provides an update on the Darren Raddysh contract negotiations, and is Jon Cooper getting disrespected by the national media in the Jack Adams race? More on today's Locked on Lightning.
You're Locked on Lightning, your daily podcast on the Tampa Bay Lightning, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked on Lightning your first listen of the day. Every single day, we are your free daily Tampa Bay Lightning podcast, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, we want to begin with a shout out to our everydayers. Those of you who tune into every single show, every single week, we love you and we appreciate the support you give us week in and week out. I'm Nick Morgan, normal partner in crime. Greg Stephen is still out sick, but we hope to have him back next week. Greg, if you're listening, get well soon, brother. A lot to get to on today's show. Julian BriseBois in a fireside chat, giving some comments on the update of Darren Raddysh's contract status. A little bit of an update to a story we covered earlier this week. We'll dive into what JBB said and why it might be a risk moving forward. Plus, NHL.com put out earlier this week some early polling on the Jack Adams nomination, and Jon Cooper, maybe predictably, a little bit low on the list. And I'm going to tell you why I think Jon Cooper deserves the Jack Adams this year. Plus, we'll look ahead to the first of two road games against the Philadelphia Flyers. Again, weird scheduling. First one happening tomorrow, a little bit of a preview for there, and a big key to the game for the Lightning to win that first game tomorrow. A lot to get to on today's show. Before we get into it, I want to mention today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. All right, let's start with a little bit of an update to a story that we talked about earlier this week on Locked on Lightning, and that's the Darren Raddysh contract situation. Now, obviously, Darren Raddysh in the middle of the best year of his life, 36 points in 36 games. He's one away from tying the career high in points he set last year, and it's conveniently coming at a time when he's about to be an unrestricted free agent. Go figure. And if he hits the market and keeps up the scoring pace, you can conceivably make the case for him being the top free agent defenseman on the market this summer. And as we all know, teams out there like to overpay for top free agent targets. So Darren Raddysh, he got the option to get paid, folks. Julian BriseBois had a fireside chat yesterday with some of the media. It was a literal fireside chat because he had that little virtual fireplace behind him. JBB, you and your home decor skills on fire, man. But anyway, JBB asked about negotiations with Darren Raddysh after the season that he's had and his future on the team moving forward. Some interesting comments from JGB or JJB. A lot of initials there. JBB. It's Friday. I'm out of it. Anyway, here's what Julian BriseBois had to say about the Darren Raddysh situation here. I think we're going to wait. Not because it's going to be a life-changing contract, but because you look at his play the first year with us, his play last year, his play at the start of the season, and his play now, I'm going to need a bigger sample size to know exactly how to value that going forward. BriseBois continued the statement saying, I don't know what the dollar sign looks like. I know I want the player, Darren Raddysh, to stay here. We love the guy. He bleeds blue, and he's helping us win. First and foremost, is that restraint and patience from an NHL general manager using statistical logic in the year of our Lord 2026? That's a bit of a refreshing change of pace. Look, you do get what BriseBois is saying here. We talked a little bit about this on the show on Tuesday. There's going to be a little bit of a gamble involved with what Darren Raddysh actually is as a player. This year, of course, he's killing it. Not unfair to question, though, whether the Lightning have just unlocked a supreme super version of Darren Raddysh, or whether this is just a guy having a career best year, maybe a bit of anomaly, in a contract year. And look, you don't want to be stuck paying an outrageous contract to a guy who basically becomes a bottom pair player, Toronto Maple Leafs. I will add this, however, into the conversation. Even if you look at Darren Raddysh and make the conclusion that this year is an anomaly, Darren Raddish's floor the past couple of years, it's still been pretty valuable. He had 33 points 2 years ago as basically an extra defender. He had 37 points last year as sort of a bottom pair rotating D-man. And I know his defense wasn't as solid back then as it was this year. It wasn't even as solid at the beginning of this year compared to now. But offense, especially from the blue line, especially that many points from a guy that you would consider a quote-unquote depth defenseman, that's still a pretty big premium in this league. And that's why I think that alone is why a Darren Raddysh contract is worth a bit of a risk. Maybe something short-term with a decent chunk of change, or maybe a little bit of a discount when it comes to AAV, but with some term involved. And you know JBB's MO, he's not afraid to give players big contracts if he thinks they're going to be a part of the team's future. I do think there's also a little bit of a risk here in waiting. Like, yeah, if Darren Raddysh comes down to earth and kind of reverts back to what he has been the past couple of years, okay, crisis averted. We don't need to pay him $9 million or anything, but we can still find him a reasonable contract. But if he keeps this up and he starts inching forward towards unrestricted free agency, you know there's going to be a team out there that doesn't have the same restraint as throwing contracts around as Julian BriseBois does. I mean, you think about Darren Raddysh, he's on pace to hit 70 points this year. If he goes into the market as a top defenseman who just scored 70 points, you know there's going to be a team out there desperate for a quarterback style blue liner who's willing to pay him $8 to $9 million. That's just the state of hockey right now. You have GMs that have proven that they're willing to bet on guys if they think they're going to be a piece that helps them right now. It might not work out for them, Nashville Predators, but for the Lightning, it still takes a valuable player off your roster. And Darren Raddysh, whether you think this season is an anomaly or not, he's still proven that he's a valuable player. And I think that's something that BriseBois has to consider. Look, if you want more in-depth details about our contract status, I said I would maybe be comfortable for like 4 years, maybe $6 million per. I think that's a little bit worth of a risk for Darren Raddysh, especially because you have the cap space. If you want to hear more of a breakdown on that, be sure to go back earlier this week and listen to Monday's Locked on Lightning. We really go into depth on it there. But whichever way, I hope Darren Raddysh stays. I love the development that he's taken this year. And whether he's that guy moving forward or not, I still think the value that he's provided is something that I think the Lightning should invest in moving forward. Moving on to Jon Cooper and the season that he's having as head coach. I've said it before. I think this is the best coaching job he's ever had, but a lot of Jack Adams voters across the NHL apparently don't seem to see it the same way. We're going to dive into a new mid-season Jack Adams poll that just came out and whether or not voters are maybe overlooking the job that Jon Cooper has done in his tenure in Tampa Bay when we come back. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. There is nothing like being near the ice, the boy aquarium, during hockey season. The speed, the hits, the atmosphere, it's unmatched. Watching at home on the TV, it's awesome. But let's be honest, being in the building is a completely different experience. The only thing that can get in the way of that is buying tickets, long queues, endless screens, and prices changing right before you hit checkout. That's why the Game Time app comes in handy. It gives the advantage back to fans like you and me. It's the hack for unlocking amazing NHL tickets and experiences in just a few taps. All you have to do is pull out the Game Time app and scroll to check out the upcoming NHL games in your area. Within seconds, in just a few taps, you can find amazing seats at a great deal. The zone deals come in clutch. All you do is choose the section you want to sit in, and Game Time picks the seats for you at the best possible price. You can even have NHL tickets available for as low as $25 to make it easy to plan a game night. It's not just hockey either. There's tickets on here for basketball, baseball, football, concerts, comedy shows, theater, you name it. There's seats available on Game Time. And the best part, the fees are included up front. So the price you pay when you put, or the price you see when you put those tickets in your cart is the price you pay at checkout. So take the guesswork out of buying NHL tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL. That's LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. We're back on Locked On Lightning. Nick Morgan here. Greg Stephen is still out sick. Let's dive into Jon Cooper and the season he's having as head coach. I've said it before. This, to me, is Jon Cooper's best coaching job. For the Lightning to be in first place in the East with all the BS that they've had to deal with this year, obviously, like, it takes players stepping up and taking their games to another level, but it also takes a level of coaching strategy and hockey IQ to take them to that point. That's where Jon Cooper, I think, has thrived this year. But here's the thing. NHL.com this week put out their mid-season poll about Jack Adams' mid-season polling. Jon Cooper was 6th on that list, not even a finalist. Jared Bednar, Colorado Avalanche, was the favorite. Joel Quenneville in Anaheim was right behind him, and then a pretty big gap. And then you had Todd McClellan, John Hines, Rick Tocchet, and then Jon Cooper. Now, look, I want to make it clear before I dive into this that all of these coaches are doing an awesome job this year, and all of those teams are doing very, very well. I'm not here to say, oh, they're overrated or they're mid or anything like that. My thing is, I just don't think the voters are taking into context the full season when they vote on the Jack Adams. It kind of feels like the past year, the Jack Adams, which is the NHL's Coach of the Year award, it's kind of devolved into two winner categories. It's like the coach of the best team in the NHL, or it's the coach of the team that really wasn't supposed to be good, that's suddenly pretty good, or, you know, a team that's kind of in the middle that's suddenly an elite contender. And look, if you look at the Lightning at surface level this year, they're a team that's been good for a long time. They were supposed to be good this year. They're pretty good again this year. There's nothing special or outrageous. I get it. But now let's look at the context of what Jon Cooper has had to deal with this year. Let's dive into the Lightning season a little bit more. In the NHL, 4th most man games lost this season due to injury. At one point, 3 of your top 4 defensemen were all out with injuries at the same time. Currently, 2 of the people you would have pegged as your 2 best defenders preseason, they're still out long-term. And you're missing another guy who was in your top 6 to begin this season, Emil Lillberg. You look at the scoring for the Tampa Bay Lightning and, you sort the stats. 5 of the top 6 scorers for the Lightning this year have missed extended time with injuries or illness at some point this season. And yet, after all of that, the Tampa Bay Lightning are still in first place. Now, to me, as it relates to Jon Cooper, to me, there are 2 things that make a really good coach in the NHL. One is finding ways to win. And I know that sounds like, yeah, man, duh. But look, here's what I mean by that. There comes a point in which every team faces some sort of adversity, some more than others. The really good teams in the NHL are the teams that find ways to keep winning despite injuries, keep winning despite key players going cold, goaltending being an issue, et cetera, et cetera. On the other hand, you have some teams who have the roster, they get really, really hot. They have a couple key injuries or anything like that. They start to fade away. You look at Jon Cooper this year during some of the roster turmoil this year. He's made some key adjustments in terms of strategy that's kept the Lightning winning despite adversity. In some of those games where, the key scorers or key players were out, maybe you don't win with firepower. So he won those games with matchups. He played different guys in different ways from game to game, depending on how they matched up with their opponents in that game. Sometimes we've seen it this season. Jack Finley, Curtis Douglas stepping up and playing big roles and big minutes in games. and actually coming through. Sometimes you relied on the third line to be the top line. And sometimes Jake Gensel, the only top 6 forward who's been healthy this entire season, has had to play with a hodgepodge of rotating lineups. And you know what? The Lightning have won all their games like that. And you know what? Even without the injuries, Jon Cooper has found ways to play matchups differently from game to game to give an advantage. Again, even when healthy. Look at this past Colorado game and how he played that game, putting Gord, Holmberg, and Girgensons against the Nathan MacKinnon line. And it worked. That line and a couple other key players from the Tampa Bay Lightning, who we talked about earlier this week, shut down arguably the best forward in the NHL right now, not named Connor McDavid, at least the guy having the best season this year. Jon Cooper's matchup strategy, sometimes with a depleted roster, has been absolutely elite. And it feels like that context is not being gripped by a lot of national pundits and Jack Adams voters. The other big thing that I think makes a great coach is player development. And not just in terms of prospects or young players slowly developing and reaching their season, but unsung players stepping up and becoming really good NHL players. Julian BriseBois actually made a comment about this yesterday when he was talking about the Darren Raddysh situation. The Bolts have a long history of players coming into the team as unknowns or maybe under the radar guys and turning into guys that you could conceivably call game changers for the team. This year, Darren Raddysh, great example of that. Jon Cooper has found a way to take him from a guy he did not fully trust defensively, and that's not just an opinion. The stats back me up on that. And he helped him unlock something in him that's now made him arguably the Lightning's MVP this year, not just having a great scoring year, but also a good defensive year as well. You look at a guy like Dastow. He was in Europe last year as a journeyman player. He was last time he was in North America, he was in the ECHL. Jon Cooper has helped him unlock something that's turned him into a really good long-term bottom pair defender. And someone, as we've seen recently, is also capable of stepping up and playing in the top 4 when needed. That's a valuable piece that the Lightning can use a really long time. And there's more players beyond that. Dominic James has come to the lineup and carved a role for himself, maybe a little bit earlier than the team expected. Pontus Holmberg is having a great year 1 with the Lightning. Zemgus Girgensons has been a lot better this year. Brandon Hagel, one of the Lightning's unknown guys' success stories that JBB mentioned, he's doing even better this year than last year, which was his career year. Now, credit to all these guys for the work that they've done individually, but I also think we have to be honest and say it does take a level of coaching to get guys to this point. Now, Jon Cooper is doing a lot of that this year, and he's done stuff like this for a really long time. But I don't know if I've ever seen him balance this level of chaos with this level of success. And I hope the NHL voters wake up a little bit and realize this. Cooper, to me, is one of the best coaches of our generation. And it's a shame that somehow he's never won the Jack Adams. That's crazy to me. And I really hope that it's not because voters are overlooking the job he's doing just because, quote, the Lightning are a team that's supposed to be good and was built good and is doing good. I hope Jon Cooper gets some recognition, and I hope voters wake up and actually dig into what's been going on for the Bolts this year and award him, because I think Jon Cooper right now absolutely deserves the Jack Adams Award for Coach of the Year. The best coaching job I've seen from a coach that you would conceivably say is maybe one of the 3 best of our generation. Well, speaking of the Jack Adams voting, Rick Tocchet, one of the guys ahead of Coop in the Adams voting, his Philadelphia Flyers are set to kick off 2 straight home games against the Bolts. So how do the Bolts win those games? And who are some Flyers to watch out for? We'll dive into that when we come back on Locked on Lightning. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The wild card round, it's officially here. And FanDuel, just like the rest of us, are officially in playoff mode. Every game during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action. Because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. That's right. Each game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts that you can apply to any bets that you like the most. You just open your profit boost pack first thing on game day and see what boosts you want to apply. The boost lets you lean into your game day instincts. So whether you're backing momentum, defense, quarterback play, or coaching, you can use the boats to make even bigger bets. The boosts also give you more juice on the bets you already like instead of forcing you to bet on something new. So if you put some money down, use the boost to make even more. Every play feels bigger, and the boosts make your bets feel that way too. You make the picks, then apply your profit boost to go after even bigger payouts while the playoffs get rolling. So visit FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. Again, that's FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. We're back on Locked on Lightning. Nick Morgan here. Greg Stephen is off. Let's get into some preview action. Lightning looking for their 9th consecutive win this weekend. They're kicking off 2 straight games on the road against the Philadelphia Flyers, one in Philly tomorrow, and then one on Philly on Tuesday. Again, no idea why the schedule played out that way, but here we are. Philadelphia Flyers this year have been a bit of a quiet surprise. Right now, 3rd place on the Metro, maybe a little bit ahead of where we thought they would be heading into the season. That said, the Flyers are kind of a weird team to judge. Offensively, 27th in expected goals this year, according to Natural Stat Trick, 21st in average goals per game. So in terms of generating offensive chances, they might actually be overachieving a bit and maybe being a little bit worse than where the stats say they are. And that's even though Trevor Zegras, his first year in Philly, is having an amazing season. He's really revitalized his career there, I think. But obviously, when you talk about the Flyers, one reason that they're winning is that their strength is their defense. 4th in the NHL, according to Natural Stat Trick, in expected goals per game. I love the Flyers' young core on D. Jamie Drysdale has developed into a really solid 2-way defender that's really fun to watch. Cam York has continued his development. He's become a really good minute muncher kind of guy for the Flyers. And then you also have Travis Sanheim, who's been really good for them again this year. I think a really good underrated defenseman. In goal, Dan Vladar, Atlanta Gladiators legend, mind you, has turned into the guy for them this year, a .915 save percentage. That's pretty good for a guy who I think a lot of Flyers fans were maybe expecting to be a backup or support goalie. Yeah, things are going pretty well for them defensively and in goal. They're certainly finding ways to win games. The question mark going into this game Saturday is going to be health for the Flyers. They're going to miss some key pieces. Travis Konechny, possibly out for this one, probably out for this one. The aforementioned Jamie Drysdale that we talked about, he, of course, got hurt in that viral big hit from Ross Johnson in that Anaheim game. More than likely out for this game. And then you have USA Olympic hero Bobby Brink, who has been a solid source of depth scoring for them this year. He's also probably out for this one. So that's 3 big pieces for the Flyers out. And like I said earlier, their depth, especially scoring, little bit of a question mark. So if you're the Tampa Bay Lightning, to me, the key to this game is just try to play mistake-free. No disrespect to the Flyers, but I think Tampa has a clear edge in both firepower and depth. But the Flyers win games by making them a slog to get through, and that's what opens the door for them to win. For Tampa, you want to do things like watch turnovers, be crisp with your passing, Play fast and explosive and aggressive like you've been doing, but also make sure you're not reckless. Stay out of the box. Be on your P's and Q's. I think if you do that, if Tampa stays the way they've been playing, a polished, methodical machine that focuses on puck possession, the Bolts, to me, have a really solid chance of winning this game. If this becomes sloppy all the way around, that's when I think the door opens for the Flyers. This is a game that could go either way for me. Obviously, I look at the big guns for Tampa. Nikita Kucherov, 14 points in the last 5 games. He's certainly the player to watch. And look, that first line for Tampa, especially with Brayden Point getting back to, sort of his high level of play that we've seen from him over the years. That to me is an X factor because, like I said, Flyers are a really good defensive team. And I think that you want to see your big guns step up and maybe carry some of that firepower into this one. And I think if they do that, I think the Lightning have a really good chance of beating the Flyers in this one. Let's just hope it happens. I want to see a good, clean game from the Lightning, and I want to see big guns stepping up. On Monday, we will, of course, recap tomorrow's game, look ahead to the rest of the games this week. Lightning have some big ones coming up again against the Flyers. They also have matchups on the road against the Pittsburgh Penguins and then St. Louis Blues before coming back home next week for a little bit of a one-game homestand against the San Jose Sharks, where Greg's favorite player, Macklin Celebrini, will be on display for the home crowd. Hey, however you're listening to us right now, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you always know when we have fresh content out for you, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening in on your favorite podcast platform. Hitting subscribe not only lets you stay in the loop, but also helps us out a little bit with our numbers. You can also keep tabs on us on social media. We're Locked on Lightning on Instagram, TikTok, pretty much wherever you scroll. You can see exclusive clips from our shows and breaking news, reactions, and a lot of other fun stuff too. For those of you who have been joining us this week, thank you for making Locked on Lightning your first choice of Lightning coverage all week long. We appreciate you making us your first listen of the day. Back with new episodes next week. Have a good weekend, everybody. We'll see you then.